Out there in the periphery and beyond, a mech with a legend of death around it stalks through the night.
I'd be a little worried after that. The whispers in his brain.
All Eddie got was a darkest dungeon mental break.
Wait, which mental break? There's multiple.
With a mouthful of teeth that seem to grow out of the mech's snout.
Oh, that kind. It's a mechanized Cthulhu.
And somewhere out in the deep.
Oh yeah, he's lost.
To encounter the Black Marauder.
That's a bit dark.
Is to encounter a gruesome end.
Anyways. Mechs.
Battletech is a setting that doesn't rely on magic
I
or
like
otherworldly spirit, whatnot.
You either get arrested or you
warp.
openly state that you are the most hard-working, cute, adorable, and precious dragon ever.
I reject your reality and substitute my own. Anyways.
Or any equivalent, no ancient wellspring of power to draw from. Unless you count Lost Tech, I guess, but that's not magic. Just stuff from a time where science was being controlled by the phone company. Said phone company may dress like wizards and have some interesting ideas on religion, but they aren't actually magical. The closest thing to that is when your HPG magically shuts down right before you're invaded, because you had some funny ideas like doing research or not paying your bills. It's a lot more grounded than most science fiction. That being said, go take the slightest of peeks into damn near any place in real life. You know what I bet you're gonna find sooner or later? Ghosts. Or something relating to them. Ghost stories.
The heck? Guy was dripped out.
You know what I bet you're gonna find sooner or later? Ghosts.
That's not a ghost. It's like a fancy Pope robot man. Fancy Pope robot man! I wonder if he goes beep boop, or he goes womp womp.
Or something relating to them. Ghost stories, ghost tours, people who swear up and down that their neighborhood reeks of the supernatural. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, even if you fully believe every
time I hear people say, even if you don't believe in ghosts, I think of, Davy Jones going, you best stop believing in ghost stories. You're in one. That's all I think about.
Haunting has a logical explanation.
I think about it all the time.
I feel uneasy at the idea of spending a night in a graveyard alone. We're superstitious, us humans. And just because we've reached the stars in Battletech doesn't mean we've gotten over that. Mech warriors tell ghost stories around the campfire just as often.
Is it too quiet? It feels a little quiet. There you go.
As we do, and few if any stand out more than that of the Dark One, the Black Marauder. Is this mech just plagued by superstition and piloted by some people with a couple of screws loose to make things worse? Or in the darkness of the void and the barely understood realm of hyperspace, has humanity grabbed the attention of something fundamentally wrong and malicious? The answer is left unknown, but by God is fun to talk about for all sorts of reasons. So today we talk about the
Not gonna lie. Pretty cute, cool.
Black Marauder. What happens when a mech gets a bit hungry? But for those of you watching this video in bed, which by my estimation is a solid almost everyone, I have a little surprise for you. Helix, the sponsor of this video. Helix makes mattresses, but these are no mere beds to lie down on. These are some of the most comfortable and supportive mattresses ever conceived by mankind.
The ultimate bed to jump on.
And the pinnacle of our ability to get a good night's sleep. They've got a large variety, and they know how to get you just the one you need. With the Helix Sleep Quiz, you just answer a few quick questions, and it'll match you with a perfect mattress. I have the Helix Midnight Lux, and I love it. I lugged it with me when I moved recently, and it's just as wonderful as it was at the old place. I've never slept better than after I got it. But don't just take my word for it. 82% of participants in Helix's Wesper Sleep Study had better sleep on a Helix mattress, and you even have a 100-night sleep trial to see if you really like it or not. Setup couldn't be easier either. Just crack open the box after they deliver it right to your front door and unroll it and watch the magic happen. And just in case you need a little bit more convincing, I've just the thing for you. Thanks to Helix for sponsoring this video. Visit helixsleep.com/pancreasnowork to take advantage of their fall savings event and get 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/pancreasnowork for 20% off site-wide. You deserve the...
Is Pancreasnowork's YouTube named Pancreasnowork because his pancreas no work? Shower thought.
best of rest, so get a Helix mattress today and sleep better than ever before. Now then, grab some marshmallows and let's hear about a mech that's mad in more ways than one. In the spirit of ghost tales, I recommend turning the lights off for this one. What's the fun of hearing a horror story in the middle of the day, you know? The Black Marauder, when we first see it, was sitting in the middle of a dugout pit that had been hidden away by its previous owners. Its story started decades before that, however, and it was already causing the people who had it grief before we even begin here. The story starts as a pair of men, one Sergeant Grange and a mech warrior under him named Kevin Langstrom, are going to dig it out of its enforced retirement. Though the tone naturally shifts, poor Kevin at least starts us off lighthearted.
They dig it out? I mean, yeah. Makes sense.
By counting how many potholes Grange hits on the way to the mech. The sun was just starting to make things uncomfortably hot, and overall Kevin was pretty miserable. What good was going all the way out to grab a single mech when they had a regiment's worth back home? Especially considering he thought he was on his way to grab some dinky industrial mech or something like that. Imagine his surprise when, as they step into the old facility, there's this looming shadow he can't quite make out. As he gets closer, it becomes clear he's looking at a Marauder, but something's off. No matter how hard he looks, he can never fully make out the mech, as if some part of it is permanently stuck in the shadows no matter the angle. It looks wrong too. Something about it doesn't sit right. It's too sleek, the proportions on it not quite right for what a Marauder should be. Sergeant Grange starts piping up after a bit about its history, settling into the good kind of old person story where they tell you some fascinating tales of the past, as opposed to explaining why everything new is bad and sucks. All of it further hinting that even if you don't buy into the supernatural aspects of it, this mech was different. It had no serial number, first of all, and Grange is quick to point out that no, it wasn't filed off so someone could sell a black market mech. It's just not there. And it was old, too. When Grange was part of the 9th FedCom RCT, they popped into an uninhabited system to recharge their drives and take a moment to breathe. Bored, they started exploring some asteroids and found what to them was the ultimate jackpot, a completely untouched Marauder. This was hardly cause for concern at the time. The Star League left plenty of random deposits of old crap across the inner sphere and periphery, and even the deep periphery held some of their old toys if you looked hard enough. No one was around to dispute their salvage, and a Marauder is a hell of a mech. If you find one in perfect condition like this for the taking, you don't ask questions. Sure, it was completely clean and untouched by dust, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You can still see the footprints on the moon because there's nothing to erode them. A mech on an asteroid with no atmosphere can logically be found pretty clean. And then, they jumped out of the system. For a bit of a side tangent, when ships jump in Battletech, there's an affliction called jump sickness. You can be nauseous, have a headache, and for real unlucky souls, you can suffer from jump psychosis, where you go a bit crazy. In my opinion, the secret fourth option of potentially being struck with torrential diarrhea is probably the worst fate you can get, but going insane isn't exactly a day at the spa either. Some people can get hit particularly hard by this, but at least according to Grange, it's the kind of thing you can see coming. No one goes nuts after just a single jump. That is, unless you're on the same ship as the Black Marauder. Everyone after the jump, for reasons they can't explain, felt an incredible sense of fear and terror once they arrived at their destination, like waking up after a nightmare, and one of their comrades just started screaming Bloody Mary. Apparently already a bit sensitive in a superstitious kind of way, this poor dude just kept switching between yelling about how they weren't dead and this strange chanting. He started looking at the engine core for sabotage, convinced something was wrong, and eventually Grange found him standing in the ship's airlock. Completely lucid, this guy stared into Grange's eyes, opened the airlock, and spaced himself. And of course, this wasn't the end of the haunting. During maintenance on the Marauder, one of the technicians was working on it and swearing up a storm. Some classic mechanical rage, bitching about the machine, everyone around him used the machine. If you've ever heard your dad utter the phrase, "hand me that wrench over there," you're probably familiar with the tone and words this man was approaching his
I'm understanding of this.
work with. Well, apparently the Marauder wasn't much a fan of this, because in spite of being powered down, its PPC went off and ensured this technician was getting a closed casket funeral. Now, I'm not at all an expert on mechanical stuff in real life, let alone fictional mech mechanics. But even when a mech is powered up, energy weapons tend to need a bit of time to fully warm up. A PPC going off like that should be impossible, but apparently this mech deals in the impossible when it comes to being a freaky piece of hardware. The next incident came during some training exercises. The person chosen to pilot the Marauder got very lost, and complaining about how he couldn't see the sun where he was at. On a planet with zero mentions of forest during the middle of the day, that's an interesting issue to be having. When they told him to try and find his way back home, his signal kept getting fainter and fainter, and planetary scans were a no-go because this was apparently one of those planets in Battletech where the scenery was 90% battlefield scrap. By the time nighttime rolled around, they couldn't find the guy still. And when the clock struck midnight, the pilot began screaming, praying to God, crying out in fear, and right before he went completely dark, he started moaning that same chant the first man who went insane did. At least according to Grange, he did. When they finally found the mech, it was in perfect condition. The neurohelmet was neatly tucked away, no damage on the mech, and the cockpit was even sealed as if the pilot was under attack by infantry trying to bust their way in. The pilot, of course, was gone. This was around the time the Marauder got a reputation for being haunted. The final straw came when the colonel in charge decided he'd...
I'd be a little worried after that, though. Not gonna lie, I'd be a little worried that the first guy went insane.
lay those stupid rumors to rest and took it out personally for some more training exercises. After even the mech warriors with no other options refused to pilot it, he figured he'd prove to everyone that this thing was fine. So he took it out and also got himself lost for a few hours, but he at least managed to get back after some time. When he returned, he popped out of the cockpit and was pale as a ghost and said to get rid of the damn thing. He didn't say a word about what had happened, he just wanted the Marauder gone ASAP. Grange and one other Conrad dumped into the middle of nowhere and left it to rot. Flash forward to the modern day, and Grange
Probably for the best.
hadn't necessarily had a turn of heart about the mech, but circumstances forced his hand, as it were. The Blakist Jihad was rampaging across the galaxy, and he felt that this was the kind of war where no options could be left off the table. Hindsight's 20/20 and all that, but Grange felt that with the inner sphere itself seemingly at risk of annihilation, all the stops had to be pulled out. He had brought Kevin Langstrom to pilot the Marauder out because he wanted a mech where he could trust piloting this thing, and spoiler alert you could probably see coming, that's one hell of an omen of things to come. When Kevin climbed up to the pilot's seat, he swore he saw the shadow of someone in it, but hey, he just heard a ghost story. It's gotta be his imagination speaking to him. When he climbed in, everything was clean as if it were new, and all things were in perfect working order, but had not been used for at least 35 years. Of course it was totally fine. When he heard a voice whisper kindred soul to him, he was probably just tired, and when he dozed off for a second only for Grange to yell at him for passing out for 2 hours, that likely just confirmed the sun was getting to him. They took it out, and after some last few hesitations by Grange and Kevin assuring him it'd be fine, the Black Marauder was back in action.
Kevin's off the rails. I saw that coming.
Kevin Langstrom was an ambitious man. Even in the prologue story, he was bitching and moaning about deserving a better position than a backwater fed rat militia. Perhaps if he studied a bit harder and focused less on chasing skirts, he could have gotten himself into anything other than a backwater post in the middle of nowhere. But as it stood, he ended up with a history of asking to transfers to somewhere else where he could find more glory to be won. He worded it as wanting more experience so he could lead better, but sure enough, as we cut to him yet again being denied, everyone involved knows he just wants to make a name for himself. Worse still was him not only not gaining the respect he felt he deserved now that he had his Marauder, but he had become something of a pariah. He suspected old Grange had spread tales of how the mech was cursed in spite of him swearing not to. Not that this changed Kevin's attitude much. Every time he came into view of the Marauder, he appreciated how much it was his mech, a novelty in an era where with manufacturing taking off again in Battletech, most people just had a mech they piloted, not their own. To him, all its oddities only made it better. The way the weapons didn't quite fit right, how its joints and arms were just a little bit misshapen compared to how a Marauder was supposed to look. Those little quirks made it his. The war machine would take him to glory. Of course, ever since getting the mech, he seemed to have developed some quirks of his own. He started to enjoy taking power naps in the cockpit with the engine running, said it vibrated at just the right frequency to lull him to sleep. Not the worst of habits on its own, except apparently it also gave him dreams of incredible intensity, which sometimes left him feeling incredibly drained. But as with all things with this monster, that's so far plenty explainable. If nothing else, who here hasn't taken what was supposed to be a quick nap only to wake up at 3 a.m. completely dehydrated, covered in sweat, and watching George Lopez bounce up and down on your TV? I forget what plane of existence I was on during those moments. Some weird dreams are hardly worth mentioning. During maintenance one day, he'd found that the Marauder's legs had far more room than a normal mech should have, being able to fit a person in them at a tight squeeze. I trust, viewer, that you're familiar with the concept of foreshadowing. He couldn't quite fix the issue the Marauder's leg parts were having, the limp no amount of maintenance seemed to do away with, but at least it was fairly comfortable to work in. We also learned that Kevin's status as a pariah was at least a bit self-inflicted. One of the fellows at his unit came up to him during maintenance and started shooting the shit, telling him that he still had some friends even if Kevin pretended not to see them. He also said that Kevin should stop working so damn hard on his mech. Jokingly, he'd always said that if he really wanted to, he could just chain some apprentice technician to the mech and have them fix the thing for him. Some meetings occur, Kevin and Grange chat, but he's also forced to talk to a fellow we'll just call Little Napoleon. Since his complex was so great, that's what the entire unit called him. He'd made something of a habit of giving Kevin shit, which naturally didn't cause Langstrom to view him in the best of lights. And one day, Kevin snapped. As Little Napoleon bragged to him about his own upcoming transfer, knowing Kevin damn well failed to get his, Kevin rounded on him with a wrench and started swinging like a man.
Baggle, have a baggle, boka, baggle.
Madman. Either dead or dying, Kevin now had to dispose of that body. And oh, would you look at that. The Marauder's legs had just the right amount of room to fit one in between the armor and the myomer. And wouldn't you know it, that special lubricant, as Kevin called the blood leaking out of the guy, was just the right kind to fix the Marauder's limp. Not a moment too soon either, because Kevin's unit was called in to deal with some Tarian invaders. Kevin and his unit took to the field, but while the rest of the Fed Rats were busy being tactical and efficient, Kevin thought differently. Kevin and his Marauder took to the town they were supposedly defending and just started blasting, not giving a damn about collateral damage one way or another. By the time Grange called him back, the town was destroyed and the planet declared lost, and at least locally, no small amount of damage was done by Kevin himself. One of his lancemates saw the body Kevin stuffed in his legs spill out, and had just enough time to gasp in shock before the battle resumed and he was slain. When Atari and Mech punched straight through the cockpit of the one man who said he still had friends earlier, Kevin lost it and got even more violent. He obliterated the rest of the enemies in front of him at the cost of basically razing the entire town. By this point, the whispers had started in his brain, and when Grange came around and told him
the whispers in his brain. It's weird that the blood lubricated the leg, though. Wouldn't it dry up from all the heat and make it worse?
to get out of the mech, Kevin obliterated the sergeant's enforcer, just in time for some pirates to corner him. 6 in total and all unlightened mechs, Kevin decided that going with them was a damn sight better than being court-martialed for killing one comrade and destroying another's mech. Of course, he had to make a statement first. He was a Marauder, as he had now started to refer to himself as. And so, in one calm motion, the Black Marauder's PPC claimed another victim as Kevin fired it straight into the cockpit of the pirate leader. He took command of that mayor group of miscreants and they headed for the planet of Tortuga Prime. From here on out, Kevin's story and that of his mech takes on that of a legend. People said some interesting things about it, and of course every drunken retelling was more embellished than the last. One thing stayed consistent though. Black Kevin, as he had become known, wasn't the source of the evil. He was just a tool of the Dark One, the Black Marauder that haunted that little corner of the universe. Tortuga Prime was your classic hive of scum and villainy. Salvaged mechs and drunken murders were part and parcel of life there, as was equally drunken dares to do stupid shit. Go piss on the first mate's mech, go ding-dong ditch one of the visiting pirate captains. So much as go touch the Black Marauder? Well, no one was too keen on that dare. One fella named Charles Bloodworth III, however, who incidentally either had the world's smallest or largest penis with a name like that, decided he was up to the task. Now, our dear friend Charlie was, much like half of Tortuga probably was at any given moment, drunk off his ass.
That much I guessed.
Him seeing the mech seemingly turn to look at him as he approached it was probably just him swaying back and forth with triple vision. Being 3 sheets to the wind does that to a man, I can assure you of that. But the mouthful of teeth that seemed to grow out of the mech's snout, or the 5 eyes on the cockpit that stared into his soul, well, forgive me for trusting the word of a drunken pirate, but I can't say I've ever seen my Uber grow teeth because I was on the edge of blacking out. This particular story would be told all the time in Tortuga, oftentimes by a fella named Twitch, who was the last of the original 6 pirates to recruit Kevin. Not everyone believed in it, of course, ghost stories by pirates not being the most reliable and all that, but whenever Kevin Langstrom entered the bar and asked for some mech warriors to accompany him on a mission, no one ever refused. All they did was accept and pray. Turns out even if you didn't buy into the Dark One's tall tales, you damn well bought into the fact Kevin was gonna put you in the ground like all but one of the remaining pirates he took command of years ago. Turns out a man like that in charge not only makes a believer out of an atheist, but makes them wonder why God hated them so much to saddle them with Kevin and his damn mech. Hell, by this point people were arguing about whether or not the Marauder would eat your soul if you got too close to it. Whether or not that's true, a reputation like that isn't exactly great.
Yummy. Oh boy.
Great for morale. Kevin wasn't the king of Tortuga, though, just its most famous bit of supernatural excitement. That title went to a man named Ravanian, a pirate king of a shithole kingdom. He pretended to be royalty, and hey, maybe he actually was Kuritan by blood. All that mattered was he had the highest body count, likely in both meanings of the word, and he had a mission lined up for old Kev. A whole storage bay of abandoned battle mechs, never reclaimed as their owners rushed to war. And after a bidding process, Black Kev was chosen to go after him. Everyone involved knew that there were games at play here, but between a pirate king and a haunted mech, you tend to keep those thoughts to yourself. Kevin pushed his crew's ship to the limits, but somehow he always seemed to know when something would or wouldn't work when it came to jumping between systems. In spite of him being anxious about hurrying this mission up before the old man caught wind of things, everything proceeded normally at first. Kevin bugged one of his underlings, a fella named Eddie, about making sure he told him if he found anything resembling star maps while they were out and about, particularly those of the deep periphery. Seemed like Kevin had found an obsession other than his mech. Something out in the deep of space was calling to him. Poor Eddie found himself in a similar position Kevin did when Sergeant Grange told him about this mech, but whereas Kevin got himself a Marauder out of the deal, all Eddie got was a Darkest Dungeon mental break. Kevin
Wait. Which mental break? There's multiple.
told Eddie that humanity was like protozoa, little useless creatures in a world so far beyond them, and somewhere out in the deep
Oh, that kind. Oh yeah, he's lost.
beyond, the Star League poke through reality and let that beyond bleed into the universe. And right as they jumped, Eddie was struck by visions of just how small he was, of beings far beyond him staring down rather angrily at the rules of reality mankind was so happily breaking. When he came to, he was on the floor covered in his own vomit, with Kevin politely telling him to clean himself up in time for a drop. Kevin and his crew raided the world, causing all sorts of havoc to build up for the main job, as pirates are wont to do. When they finally marched on the mechs, they found only a lance's worth, but these weren't lying in wait to be salvaged. They were armed and ready for a fight, with Old Man Grange leading them. Turns out the old sergeant was willing to work with even pirates if it meant cutting that mech down and ridding the galaxy of the Dark One. Kevin's voice seemed to become someone else's as the battle broke out, and the Black Marauder seemed to become more clear in the dark of the smoke, to fight better in the shadows. During a break, as they retreated away for a moment, they had the idea to round up some hostages. Kevin, unfortunately, had another idea on how to use them. A hostage you can't use isn't much use, you see, but a few dozen chained to your mech will make anyone pause.
Oh god. Okay, now that's a bit dark.
Before they opened fire. When him and his remaining cronies emerged back out, poor old Sergeant Grange could only weep and apologize to Kevin for failing him and letting that damn mech claim his soul. Kevin, for his part, was noted by Eddie to be disturbingly lucid, like that one bastard who jumped into space without a suit at the start. It wasn't a madman lashing out to survive, though for all we know, Kevin was well beyond insanity by this point. Most of Kevin's hostages were long gone by the time he and the Marauder limped back into their ship. One woman chained to the PPC, though, turns out Kevin never fired it. They let her go right before they took off. Eddie felt sorry for her until he looked her in the eyes and saw the same look Kevin would give them staring back at him. Though it was a trap, things were a complete wash for Kevin. Turns out when Eddie broke into a library earlier, he had downloaded just what Kevin wanted, a star map. If I had to guess, in the wake of the Blakest, Comstar had more pressing problems than one random station's hard drive to look through and missed a spot to clean up. Kevin got his map leading him where he needed to be. He just had one final stop to make. Tortuga, to give Ravenian a bit of payback. When he touched down, there was no hellfire raining down across the place, no grand statements. He didn't need to make them, because as he walked up to challenge Ravenian, to choke the life from him and hang him up from his palace upside down, the Black Marauder walked beside him. Cockpit open, no one inside, in tow with its master. Or rather, its pilot, since as Eddie says, it was clear to everyone just who was giving the orders by this point. Kevin even said as much to Eddie later on. It commands me go, and go I will. Eddie never saw Kevin or the Dark One again. He didn't need to be scared of them for the rest of his life. Eddie
I bet. Hello? You joined in to hear terrifying Mech ghosts.
Considered himself a rational man, but like I said about graveyards earlier, like Eddie said about an atheist thanking God for small miracles, humans aren't rational creatures. So since then, he did as Kevin bade him to with his last order, tell his tale like no one else can, with special mention of how they found Twitch after a few months, welded into an unused storage room and rotting up the place. Guess Kevin didn't want to take his leave without leaving one last gruesome present behind. Of course, it wouldn't be much of a legend if it ended there. The Black Marauder would go on to inspire quite a few more tales of terror. Perhaps Kevin raged across space until he hit the deep black, or maybe some of those pirates found themselves trauma dumping across the periphery and the story just took hold. In one tale, the summoner of a clan Snow Raven Star Commander was found upright, armless and empty, with the cockpit completely sealed. No one knew exactly what had happened, but a single frame of footage from the battle showed what looked to be the arm of a jet black Marauder peeking through the smoke of the battle, firing off laser weaponry. In another tale, a pair of knights set out to deal with a mech that had been committing heinous atrocities on a planet under their protection. One of the pair never returned, while the other came back without a mech and speaking only of the Dark One, with another of their order vowing to scrap every last bit of wiring the mech had. And sure enough, this order, the Brotherhood of Randus...
Wait, a Marauder took out 2 knights? Hello?
And Clan Snowraven had a few more encounters with this mech. That lance from before not only had their star commander's mech ruined, but the entire star by a mech that moved less like a machine and more like an animal. A group of Snowraven warriors and some members of that Brotherhood of Randus marched out on a bit of a ghost hunt one day, finding after a few days of travel on a planet what seems to be the Dark One's calling card. A mech sunken in a river, cockpit sealed and with a neuro helmet neatly tucked away within. Soon after, they find a facility covered in fog like it was Silent Hill, the entire place torched to the ground by incendiary weapons. A nearby farm told a similar story, with the only survivor being a single child, who after finally relaxing enough to speak, only said that God himself came down to lay waste to his family. As he tried to name a few of the Mudfoots that sometimes traded with his village, who were almost certainly pirates, one of them immediately grabbed the attention of everyone involved, Langstrom. And not long after, the battle began. Various mechs assaulted the group of clanners and knights, and seemingly out of a darkness that wasn't there came the star of the show. The Black Marauder returned once more from wherever Kevin's destiny lay. As the group retreats from the fight while a few of their comrades buy them time, they eventually make camp where one of them, a fellow
So is Kevin writing it, or is it writing itself now?
named Percy, who was rather into this whole tale, took a moment to try and offer something approaching a logical explanation. Although in full transparency for saying that, his explanation was only about a step above saying ghosts did it. Hyperspace in Battletech, you see, isn't much well understood, even though it's used all the time. It's like Dark Age tech in 40k or Foreigner tech in Halo. Oftentimes used, at least in stories, but well beyond anyone actually using it. Although the difference here is that even during the Star League, no one quite understood what the hell was up with it. And for all they know, when that fourth dimension they hop through during hyperspace travel, there could be life forms that view them the same way we view a 2D drawing. To reverse that a bit, that 2D drawing would only see a sliver of our 3D world. Now taking it forward, these fourth dimensional beings interacting with us would appear as something we could comprehend, if only for the sake of our sanity. And that shape they take could be anything, even that of a mech. Of course, Percy admits he was getting a bit drunk by this point, but you can hardly blame him for his interest in the Marauder, given what happened to him before. In case you needed more reason to think Kevin Langstrom, well over 100 if he was still alive by this point, was a rotten human being, then look no further than Percy's grandmother. Turns out she was the woman chained to the Marauder's PPC, and she was pregnant at the time. Whatever hate she had, be it supernatural or entirely understandable for being chained to a PPC by someone, at least some of it trickled down to Percy. Shortly afterwards, though, Percy would find himself a bit too busy shitting his pants to contemplate the finer points of this mystery.
Well, that's ironic.
One of the Snow Ravens with him, a man named Lucian, took him on a joyride in his own mech towards the same farm they found the Insane Boy at, where the pirates had camped around. They saw none other than the Marauder itself there, but to Percy's both relief and hatred, this wasn't the Black Marauder he'd been hunting. Just a Black Marauder. One of the clanners supposedly had a shard of the original's armor turned into a knife that they carried around. This Marauder didn't give off the energy as even that sliver did. Even if you think that's a bogus explanation, and
Wait, so is it destroyed? How does he have a knife? From its armor.
You want to ignore anything supernatural, this one had clear markings and pattern lines of your standard General Motors Marauder, just with a black coat of paint thrown on it. With legends of the Dark One spreading across the galaxy, it's hardly surprising that someone would take advantage of Langstrom and his pet monster to cause a bit of mayhem. Sure enough, in the final battle to come, Kevin Langstrom revealed himself to be rather more appropriately addressed as herself, claiming that one black Marauder was as good as any for the legend to strike fear into whatever unlucky bastard was in front of her at the moment. Of course, unlike the legendary Kevin Langstrom she seemed to adore using the name of so much, she wasn't nearly as good in a fight. Her impersonation only served to piss off Percy and his modified archer, who let loose with 40 Clanner LRMs what was basically point blank before beating her cockpit in and then firing some lasers at it for good measure. The battle was theirs and their companions largely lived, but of course it wouldn't be much of a ghost story without one final act of horror. Now,
so are we supposed to assume that the Black Marauder has like a very advanced AI or something?
would it? One of Percy's comrades was not quite himself partway through the battle. His comrade, named Lucian, had ran off to chase something and didn't sound like what he usually did. Percy and his battered archer chased after Lucian's last position. His mech was found. Lucian was not. Instead of his comrade's greeting or any kind of explanation, he received thanks. Thanks for dealing with that imposter who'd proven at least smart enough to avoid getting herself killed by the real deal. Sensors picked up nothing but static, but in the darkness, Percy saw a silhouette in the night sky that seemed somehow blacker than the rest of it. A voice once again thanked him, and even after Percy let loose with his remaining missiles, the Dark One allowed him to live. As it left, Percy asked who he was. Though the only response he got was advice to never ask a question he feared the answer to, Percy knew damn well who and what he was speaking to. Percy and another of his companions were recommended for full knighthood by the Brotherhood of Randus for their efforts on the planet, for while the ghosts they were hunting escaped, they had successfully crippled a pirate organization causing problems in the area. The Clanner companions, having been sent alongside them to die essentially, vowed to stay with Percy and continued his mission to tell the inner sphere of the ghosts that returned to haunt it. But I did say that Clan Snowraven at least encountered the Marauder a few more times, not once more, and this particular story was more focused on Brother Percy than the Clanners. October 12th, 3151, nearly a full century after Sergeant Grange brought Langstrom to make his deal with the devil.
Cosmic
Lydia
horror.
Spatz, a Snow Raven warrior, was dealing
It's Cthulhu. It's Cthulhu!
with a clan wolf fellow named Tehran Sender, who was interested in looking for a lost Star League-era jump ship. Those things always have some nice tech to be had, and in this case it was for something called Project Butterfly. Tehran's reasoning for searching for this lost bit of Star League-era tech? He had undergone a procedure to make himself more compatible with his mech than any pilot in history, but the procedure was slowly but surely killing him. Hopefully, when combined with a potential Star League equivalent, either the two procedures could be merged into one perfected version, or the Star League one would have a non-lethal way to go about things. At the very least, maybe it could result in information that would save his life. Of course, as with all good horror logs, like what you might find in a Dead Space game, from decrypted files on the project, mention is made of superstitious sailors, and promises from one of the researchers that screaming into the void has yet to actually get an answer in response. Combined with the seemingly related Project B, and additional logs where a test subject screams at a scientist that when you break into someone's home they get mad at you, and we're finding out that the Black Marauder's history, at least in part, reaches as far back as humanity's golden age. Voices in the subject's head had driven him mad, and whether or not they're the same ones as the future pilots of the Dark One heard, this poor man clearly didn't meld quite as well with them as Black Kevin did. Tehran and Lydia were both understandably disturbed, but Lydia revealed that she not only believes this technology can be found, she knows just the mech that likely has something of these projects in it, and I'm sure at this point you know which mech I'm talking about. Heading to a planet in the midst of a bit of an economic boom now that the Blakes were mostly dealt with, our Clanner heroes head off to investigate where this meeting point of Projects Butterfly and B might lie. With rumors of bandit activity afoot, they head out to investigate a crashed starship, which turns out to be in ruins and picked near clean. Interspaced throughout is a potential explanation of the Dark One. Tehran's experimental interface lets him quite literally see and feel through his mech's myome or muscle fibers and sensors. A mech with two of these types of experiments jammed together? Well, you can certainly see how that's asking for trouble one way or another. Scouting of the planet revealed it was wild and untamed, perfect for an ambush from the bandits plaguing the area. And an ambush would come, of course, but not from anything as mundane as that. A landslide buried one of the party in the night, and the Black Marauder once more did combat with mortal enemies. Lydia and the rest of the Clanners went to battle, but Tehran's enhanced senses saw something more in this mech. He didn't just see the blackness the rest of the people who encountered this thing saw, he saw the true nothingness the Marauder was. His sensors were completely useless as this monster from beyond reality. With his normal human eyes, he saw something a bit more down to earth, but no less dangerous. The completely black-coated paint combined with some sort of stealth technology meant that sensors could never hope to pick it out. With how graceful it moved, Tehran felt he could understand the mystery of the Black Marauder in a way no one else could. The Star League must have succeeded in some way with their experiments, in the same way his allowed him to see through his mech like no other. His knowledge wouldn't do him any good, though. Even if he was dead on and he was on the exact same page as the Marauder, this machine had 100 years plus of experience on him. Though he wounded the beast in a way no one before him had, Tehran and his own mech were one more tally to add to the Marauder's kill count. Lydia watched it skulk away into the darkness, hurt like never before, but still alive. And for now, the story of the Black Marauder ends there. Lydia promised to see it brought low and thought that this time she would reach out to another who had seen it and lived. Percy, from not only the previous entry on the Marauder, but the only other person who'd seen it and lived to tell. Drunken pirates aside, of course, but I doubt
I'm noticing that a lot of mention of drunken pirates.
any of the ones were left from Tortuga to give a worthwhile account. The Black Marauder is certainly one of the more out there pieces of Battletech lore, but I think it manages to fit into the setting quite.
It's interesting. So it's like Cthulhu. The only time you ever like get like a full story about it is apparently drunken pirates, because it only really goes around pirates and stuff. It's a mechanized Cthulhu. It's got stealth camo on it, and it's black. So your sensors don't do really anything. Which makes you think, like, why more Mechs didn't do that? Or maybe it's like outlawed or something.
Nicely, and I'd recommend giving at least the anthology book a read. As the author Lance Scarini mentions at the end of the foreword, Battletech is a sci-fi setting fairly grounded in reality. But in a sci-fi setting with hyperspace travel and mechs you at least partially wire your brain into, what is reality? And while he does also mention wanting to give people the idea that even battle mech, there's things mankind isn't ready to meet, and so
you mind
he
if I
made
make a
Ghost
video
Mech,
of this?
the what is reality doesn't strike me as
If you join the
going,
Discord,
it's
yeah.
actually a supernatural setting the whole time. What is reality is the entire point of the Black Marauder story. For every single thing about this mech, there's an explanation you can find that adheres to either established rules or things that logically make sense. The Marauder being found with no serial number and not quite being right for what one should look like, maybe Langstrom was right from the beginning without knowing it. Someone who'd seen a Marauder and had too much time and money on their hands decided they'd make their own from scratch. That'd explain things like why it looked wrong and why its legs at least seemed to have far more room than they should have. The thing moving on its own gets explained a bit later on, but still makes sense. It seems logical, at least to me, that someone out there would look into ways to make a mech more compatible with a person. Perhaps for the Marauder, this compatibility technology stuck around even after Langstrom got out of the mech, allowing him to remotely control it as he did on Tortuga. Its limp magically being fixed after Langstrom shoved a corpse into it? It could have been something as simple as it being unbalanced on account of all that empty space, and anything heavy enough would have done the trick just as well. He said himself that all the individual parts worked fine, but when put in the mech they didn't quite gel with each other. It could be as simple as a weight distribution problem. Imagine if he left half the leg of any mech empty, it'd have some trouble walking around. It's still being active after Langstrom would have been well over 100 can be explained as well. Genetic engineering exists in Battletech, just look at the Clanners. Maybe he found some ancient lab in the deep periphery to extend his lifespan. Or the simplest answer, someone just hopped into the damn thing and started taking credit. If I found a mech with a reputation for being a bloody monster, I'd at least consider giving it a joyride. Kevin passing out for 2 hours initially was just him being exhausted. He mentioned pages earlier that, yeah, the sun's starting to beat down on him. Time for a quick nap, maybe. I'm sure that most, if not all of you, have meant to take a nap.
I like how we're like trying to explain away half the horror. That's like really funny. It's like, okay, now let's try to explain all this horror stuff away with simple facts and logic. That's like literally every time you bring like a horror story to like a scientist or something, their first thought, let's explain away every single thing with facts and logic.
Some of the more out there things can make sense. You know how that one pirate saw eyes and teeth, a mouth as it looked at him and seemingly stared into his...
That's definitely just someone hallucinating. They try to rationalize, yeah. But like the teeth thing, that's definitely someone hallucinating. If we go by like rationalization and stuff, that's so easy to like debunk. Or like, not debunk, but rationalize. Because no one else has saw the teeth and eyes. So you must be hallucinating. Because that's kind of like the whole thematic with science and stuff is if it's not repeatable, then it must be a mistake kind of thing. And the whole and then there's the whole thing where if it can't be explained, scientists don't like this, but a lot of people go by the rationale that like if it can't be explained, the most obvious and least likely answer might just be the answer. It's usually what people go for, is like, if you can't explain it with the obvious, then you look to the opposite side of the spectrum of like the unlikely. Usually the unlikely answer is the answer at that point. Like the one you discounted. And we're like, nah, it can't be that. Let's not even bother trying that.
Soul. I know I said I've never seen a car grow teeth after I've had a few...
Or we are facing aliens. They don't like... Sure.
Drinks, but this was alcohol found on some backwater pirate kingdom. God only knows what they were cutting it with, intentionally or not.
Which, fair enough. You make a good point. Like, it was a dragon in a mech costume. Yeah! A dark dragon. But like... That's totally like a good explanation. Is like, however they were making the booze had to be kind of faulty or something, because they're in like a backwater town and stuff on a backwater planet. So sure, they might not have all the like correct stuff to make their booze. Totally acceptable to say, oh, well, the booze was slightly tainted or something and caused people to hallucinate. It's a good explanation. Hi, RJ. It's like a totally reasonable explanation for, like, your explanation for them, like, hallucinating.
One of the pirates said he put coolant in someone's drink, and I can't
One of those pirates is an idiot.
be entirely sure if he was joking. I have no idea what I'd be seeing if I downed a whiskey and coke with a motor oil
Don't worry
chaser.
about it. Comstar says they don't.
Comstar says they don't. Okay, yep, sure, Comstar. You're not known for lying.
As for the multitude of people early on who Grange claimed were repeating the same chanting, well, without going into too much detail, because this is me talking about ghost stories and not trauma dumping, I get it. One day in high school, I downloaded a remix of a Kirby song of all things. Shortly afterwards, I had, shall we say, a bit of a traumatic moment before avoiding what could have potentially been a very traumatic moment. Every time I hear that song now, I just think of that moment because I first listened to it about 20 minutes prior. Now take that and apply it here. The first dude just loses his marbles, that's it. Well,
Understandable. Have a nice day.
tales of that begin circulating, and I can't imagine anyone who heard them would forget it. Gibberish or not, that'll leave an imprint on you.
I mean, yeah. That's definitely true. Gibberish or not, a guy going insane and spouting all that stuff would cause people to go a little... Good night, Mark.
The nonsense the guy who spaced himself was spouting is well recognized by this point.
Oh, hi,
So
Mark.
when
Oh, bye,
another guy
Mark.
who got lost during a mission gets stressed out, he freaks out, subconsciously remembering what the first guy said. He has a mental break.
That's, yeah, no. Good explanation,
for a whole
honestly.
load of reasons that are perfectly explainable, starts repeating that chanting, and everyone listening in, it sounds like the same devil that got the first guy claimed someone else's soul. Its story spread from there as people who spend a good deal of their lives in the endless void of space think about it and share the tale some more. Once you add Kevin Langstrom being a glory-hungry maniac into the equation, you get tales of a mech that has, is, and will continue to drive men mad with its inherent evil. Its entire tale could just be the galaxy's most frightening game of telephone ever conceived, conjured up and told by people already a bit prone to superstition to begin with. A murder with an advanced piece of tech is all Kevin Langstrom and his Marauder ever were. That's the ultimate truth of this story. Of course, the flip side of this can be taken equally truly if you'd like. Hyperspace isn't well understood in Battletech, like I said. Between two different related Star League experiments involving not only hyperspace, but enhancing man's senses far.
Yeah, the whole enhancing men thing makes sense. Like, I could see someone being like crazy reactive and stuff after that. Like, that's the whole explanation a lot of people have. Yep, Strider, I think. Hello. Where's my... My mouse dead? Oh, that now you wake up. Okay.
Beyond what they
There
can
you
do naturally. Maybe they did punch into another dimension. Maybe they did find something, or something found them. Maybe Percy was right. That fourth dimension has things in it that mankind isn't ready to see, and to comprehend it, all we can see is a marauder-shaped monstrosity that yearns for blood. No one...
I mean, that is like the main explanation for a lot of Cthulhu-based stuff, is you can't perceive, like you would go mad perceiving it as reality, so your brain substitutes something you can accept. Like your brain is protecting you. It's like walling off the actual image. With an image, the brain knows it can understand. And they're all mech pilots, so of course they see a mech.
Told Langstrom any lines about kindred souls like he heard when he climbed into the cockpit for the first time. No one specifically mentioned whispers constantly in the back of his head. No one explained to him there was potentially some advanced tech inside the thing he could use. Incidentally, what technology...
Which we could probably assume, if we're going scientifically, an advanced AI.
Technology can make a mech move better in darkness, somehow stronger and more durable when cloaked in shadow. At a certain point, a game of telephone can only be so good of an explanation for all the tales about this thing. The first time someone goes insane and spouts gibberish, that's just unfortunate. Second time it happens and the person spouts the same gibberish, hey, it was someone in contact with the first guy. The human brain's a hell of a thing and picks up on a lot more than people realize. When similar things happen to at least one completely unrelated test subject centuries earlier who'd also go...
The first time it happens, coincidence. The second time would be what we like to call a line.
Gone completely insane in a way not at all dissimilar to Langstrom? See, now we're in the realm of supernatural chicanery. And quite frankly, in its own way, the simplest explanation is the scary one. You start digging around with
the simplest explanation, like the one you discount the most, being the answer, is kind of scary.
Fabric of reality with tech that even at mankind's height is a near complete mystery, you're gonna end up event horizoning this shit. It may not even be some fourth dimensional entity. Mech's haunted, there's your answer. Stop trying to hunt the ghost mech. Whether the weapons themselves are supernatural or just the mech, it has PPCs and it seems to take issue with people trying to figure it out. What is reality isn't a cop-out, it's inviting you to take a look and decide which answer you like more. Also, look, I understand it could just be a simple weight thing, but I don't think shoving corpses into complex machinery is supposed to fix them that easy. Not unless your machine is alive and fueled by the souls of the damned. And either way, the end result is the same for everyone who finds this thing. Out there in the periphery and beyond, a mech with a legend of death around it stalks through the night. Be it supernatural, mundane, or something in between, one thing has remained constant. To encounter the Black Marauder is to encounter a gruesome end. Thank you, as always. to my wonderful channel members. You are the Kevin Langstrom to my Black Marauder, helping me carve a path of terror across the inner sphere and beyond. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a... Hello, fine stranger. Do you like merchandise? Do you like pregnant men?
What is with you guys and pregnant men? I will never understand.
Well, then this Lore Crimes t-shirt is for you. Behold this fine piece of artwork. Proudly wear a shirt of your favorite members of the Lore Crimes podcast, all either bearing or already with child. Appreciate the reference to a fine piece of media that went into this unrivaled masterpiece. Witness. Brick. This is a fine piece of Lore Crimes merchandise that you can now own, and if you absolutely despise me but love the other 3 members of that fine podcast, then you can still enjoy at least most of this shirt. You can even
Most
get
of
this
this
as a print
shirt.
to do whatever you want with. Hang it on your wall, tape it to your car window, show the world your love of
That was a muscle.
pregnant lore channel, man. To get this, there's a link below that will take you to Orchid 8 to purchase this amazing one.
You guys are...
Get the bundle, the t-shirt on its own, or the print on its own. And to sabotage...
You guys are special, guys. You guys are so special. That was Pancreasnowork. We love them and love them. Give a like and follow if you enjoyed it. Give me a like and follow if you want. Not that I care anything. Smoke. Boom. Bye.